Hi everyone, welcome back to Lulumath. This video is on factoring trinomials by trial and error, but this time we are going to be using the geometric model. So the background knowledge that you're going to need is you're going to need to know how to multiply a binomial by a binomial using the geometric model. So go ahead and check out that video if you need a refresher on how to do that. All right, so let's get into it. I want to factor this 2x squared plus 9x plus 10 using trial and error. And since I'm using the geometric model, in trial number 1, I'm going to show the box that we use to do our multiplication. So for trial number 1, I'm going to use the box that we use to do our multiplication, and we're going to use that box to help us work backwards to get to a point where we can actually figure out, well, what are my two factors going to be that will multiply together to give me this 2x squared plus 9x plus 10. So this time I'm given my answer. I know that I'm going to have a 2x squared here. I know that I'm going to have a 10 right here. And if you remember when we did our multiplication, when we had a binomial multiplied by a binomial, a lot of times these two boxes would add up together to give us this middle term that we have right here, which is this 9x. So for my trial and error, I'm going to look and see what two things can I multiply together to give me this 2x squared. So I'm going to look for two factors of 2. Well, factors of 2 are just 2 and 1, which is nice. So I'm going to have a 2 for one of my side lengths, and I'm going to have a 1 for the other side length. I also need to get x squared. So I could either put 2x squared here, or I could put 1x squared here, or I could put x and x. Now, I'm going to use x and x because I know that I need this top right box and this bottom left box to have x's in them to add up to give us 9x right here. There's no x squared terms for these two boxes, which means that these need to be x's here. Okay, great. Now that I've done that, I'm going to look at this bottom right box here, and I'm going to see, well, what two things can I multiply together to give me 10? So I'm going to make a list of factors for 10 now as well. I can multiply 1 and 10 together to give me 10, or I can multiply 2 and 5 together to give me 10. So I'm going to start right now, trial number 1, with 1 and 10. So I'll put a 1 up here, and I will put a 10 to the left side right here. So when I do these boxes here, this top right box is going to be 2x by 1, and 2x times 1 is 2x. Then for this bottom left box that we have here, I'm going to do 10 by 1x, and 10 times 1x is 10x. And there's just no way that this 2x and this 10x will collect together to give us this 9x that we want. So trial number 1 is not going to work for us. Okay, for trial number 2, I'm going to create another box. And again, I know that I'm going to have 2x squared in my top left box. I'm going to have this 10 right here in my bottom right box. And I know that my top right box and my bottom left box should collect together to give me a 9x, this 9x that we have right here. So again, I know that I should put 2x and 1x here, okay? And this time, instead of putting the 1 on the top and the 10 on the left side, I'm going to swap them because still 10 times 1 will give me 10, but then I'll get different values in these empty boxes that we have here. So let's figure out what those boxes should end up becoming. So in my top right box, it's going to be 2x right here by this 10 right here, and 2x times 10 is 20x. In this bottom left box that we have right here, I know it's going to be 1 by x, and I know 1 times x is x. Now, 20x and x, there's no way that those will give me this 9x that I'm looking for here, so trial number 2 is not going to work. Okay, now for trial number 3, same setup. We still want this to multiply out to give us 2x squared. We want our bottom right box to be 10, and we want what's inside of this box right here to add up together to give us this 9x. Now I crossed off 1 and 10 because 2 and 1 combined with 1 and 10 showed us in trials number 1 and 2 that they're not going to work. So let's go ahead and try with this 2 and with this 5. So first of all, I'm still going to put 2x here, and I'm going to put x here, and I'm going to try a 2 here, and I will try a 5 here. So to get this box, I would multiply 2x by 2, and I would end up getting 4x. And to get this box here, I would multiply 5 by x, and 5 times x gives us 5x. And if I were to add a positive 5x with a positive 4x, that would give me a positive 9x, which is what I'm looking for. So this is great. Well, that means that if I want a positive 4x here, that this 2 has to be positive, because positive 2 times positive 2 is positive 4. And because this 5x is positive, this 5 also needs to be positive. So these two pieces right here are our binomials that we want to multiply together to give us this 2x squared plus 9x plus 10. So our first binomial will be 2x plus 5, and our second binomial will be x plus 2, and we have successfully factored this trinomial. Now, one quick note that I want to make sure that you are all aware of is, in our original problem, 2x squared, 9x, and 10, they don't have any common factors. So when you do your factoring right here, your binomials also should not have any common factors as well. So if you look here, we had 2x and 10 right here. 2 and 10 have a 2 in common, which means that there is a GCF in one of our binomials right here. But because there's no GCF in the original problem, then that will tell us right away that trial number 1 isn't going to work at all. I wouldn't even have to bother doing the multiplication because, again, if there's no GCF here, there should be no GCF in my factors. All right, one last note is that at first, one last note is that at first it's going to feel very daunting to keep doing all of these trials, but I promise you that with more practice, it's going to come a little bit more easily and you won't have to do as many trials because you're just going to be more used to it and you'll have more intuition as to what the factors are going to look like. Okay, let's take a look at our next example. We are asked to factor x squared plus x minus 20. So let's go ahead and set up our first trial. We are going to fill in all of our information into our box. So we know that our first terms multiplied together will give us this x squared that we have right here. We know that our last terms multiplied together will give us this negative 20 that we have right here. And we know that this x will come from collecting these two together right here. So this will be an x inside of this box. So the nice thing about this x squared that we see here is that this has an invisible coefficient of 1, and the only numbers we can multiply together to give us 1 are just 1 and 1. So I'm going to put an x here, 1x and 1x. Now, for this negative 20 that we have here, I'm going to make my chart for 20 and I'm going to see what numbers can I multiply together to give me 20. I'm not going to worry about the negatives quite yet. I'm just going to place my numbers first and then go from there. So I'm going to put in here a 1 and a 20 because 1 times 20 is 20. I'm going to try 2 and 10. 3 does not work. I can't divide 20 by 3. 4 works. I can do 4 times 5 gives me 20, and those are all my factors. So let's start with this 1 and this 20. So I'll put a 1 here, and I will put a 20 on the bottom left. And we know that what goes in this box will be x times 1, and x times 1 is just x, or 1x. And we know that what goes in this box right here is 20 times x, and we know that 20 times x is 20x. Now, 20 and x, no matter what the signs are, will never collect together to give us 1x. Remember, this x right here has an invisible 1. So 20 and x, if I play around with the signs, can only give me a positive 21x, or if they're both negative, will give me a negative 21x. Or if the 20 is positive and the x is negative, will give me a positive 19x. Or if the 20x is negative and the x is positive, will give me a negative 19x. None of those are 1x. So this tells me trial number 1 does not work. So before I start trial number 2, I just want to say that if I were to swap the 1 and the 20, it wouldn't make any difference in my boxes at all because 20 times x is going to be the same thing as if I put 20 here times this x. It's just going to be in a different box. So that tells me that 1 and 20 are just not going to work. Now, before we move on, we need to fill in our information that we know from the problem into our box. So again, we know this is x squared. We know that this bottom right box is going to be negative 20 here. And this box here, this x that we see. Okay, so I'll put an x here and an x here. And now I'm going to try the 2 and the 10. So I'll put a 2 here and I'll put a 10 here. Again, I'm not going to worry about the signs yet until I find something that seems like it may be promising. So in this top right box, I'm going to have x times 2, and x times 2 is 2x. In this bottom left box here, I'm going to have 10 times x, and 10 times x is 10x. And 10x and 2x will not collect together to give us 1x. It's impossible. So trial number 2 is also not going to work for us. So let's go ahead and give trial number 3 a shot. We'll fill in the information that we know. We know that we have an x squared here. We know that we have a negative 20 here. And we know that this box right here is going to be the combination of these two boxes. And together, we will get 1x. Again, to get x squared here, we can only do x times x. And we used, for this negative 20, we used 2 and 10, and we figured out that that's not going to work. So let's go ahead and try the 4 and the 5. So I'll put a 4 here, and I'll put a 5 here. Again, I will worry about the signs if I get to a point where something looks promising. So in this box, I'm going to multiply x by 4, and I get 4x. In this box, I'm going to multiply 5 by x, and I get 5x. And it does look promising. I can get 1x from a 5x and a 4x if the 5x is positive and the 4x is negative. 5 minus 4 is positive 1. So if that's the case, that means that this 5 right here has to be positive, and that means this 4 right here has to be a negative. Now double check to make sure that that really truly gives us this negative 20 that we're looking for in the bottom right. So 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, so this works for us. So this means this is one of my binomial factors, and this is my other binomial factor, making my final answer x plus 5 times x minus 4. This is my factored answer. Okay, in our next example, we're asked to factor x squared minus 10x plus 24. So let's get right into it. Let's fill in the information that we know. So we know this is x squared right here. So we'll put x squared in our top left box. We also have this 24 right here. So we'll put that in our bottom right box. And we know that our top right and our bottom left box will combine together to give us this negative 10x that we are looking for. So looking at this x squared, again, like in our last example, our only options are 1 times 1, so we'll do 1x times 1x. It's the 24 that gives us a few options. So let's list out factors of 24. We can do 1 and 24. We can do 2 and 12. We can do 3 times 8. And we can do 4 times 6. 5 doesn't work, and 6 is the next number, but it's in our chart, so we've covered all possible factors. Now, the nice thing about this leading coefficient of 1 right here is that this 1 is going to make whatever I multiply this 1x by over here the same coefficient as what we have up here. So that means with this leading coefficient of 1, I have a lot less guessing and checking that I need to do. However, if the leading coefficient is bigger than 1, I have to do some more guessing and checking. So looking at my chart here, again, I want to get negative 10x in the middle here. 1 and 24, there's just no possible way I can get a negative 10 from a 1 and a 24. I can get a negative 10 from a 2 and a 12. I cannot get a negative 10 from a 3 and an 8. That's impossible. And I can get a negative 10 from a 4 and a 6. So we'll try our first set right here. So I will put a 2 here, and I will put the 12 here. Okay? And again, I'm not going to worry about the signs until I get to a point where I know my answer is going in the right direction. So in this box, it will be 1x times 2, which is 2x. In this bottom left box, it will be 12 times x, which is 12x. And I can get a negative 10x if the 12 is negative and the 2x is positive. So negative 12 plus 2x is negative 10x. Now, that means that this 12 would have to be negative because this is a negative 12x here. And that means that this 2x would have to be positive. So that makes this 2 up here positive. But 2 times negative 12 gives us a negative 24, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for a positive 24. So that tells us that this trial is not going to work. This is a common mistake that a lot of people will make, so watch out for that. So for our next trial, we'll fill in the information that we know. We have this x squared will go in our first box right here. We know that this 24 will go in our bottom right box, and we know that these two boxes together will add up to give us negative 10x. Again, x times x are my only options here. And then we tried 2 and 12 and we figured out it's not going to work. So let's try the 4 and the 6. So I'll put a 4 on the top right and I'll put a 6 on the bottom left. And in this box, it's x times 4, which is 4x. In this box right here, it's 6 times x, which is 6x. And I can get a negative 10x if the 6x is negative and the 4x is negative. If I add negative 6x and negative 4x together, I get negative 10x. Well, the fact that this 4x is negative means that this 4 up here has to be negative. And the fact that the 6x right here is negative means that this 6 over here has to be negative. And if I were to multiply negative 4 right here by negative 6, I get the positive 24 that I'm looking for. So this is going to work for us. This is excellent. So that means that our two binomial factors are x minus 4 and x minus 6. So this is going to be my final answer. Okay, in our last example, we have 6x squared minus 7x minus 5, and we'll fill in the information that we know in our box. So we know that our first term is 6x squared, so that'll go in our first box. We also know that we've got a negative 5 here, so that goes in our bottom right box. And then this piece right here is the combination of these two boxes, which will result in a negative 7x. So I'm going to look right here, what numbers can I multiply together to give me this 6? So let's make a list. So I can do 1 times 6, or I can do 2 times 3. And then I'm going to look and see what numbers can I multiply together to give me this negative 5. So again, we're not going to worry about the signs right now. We're just going to worry about the numbers. We'll place the signs at the end. 5 is nice because it's a prime number, so all I have for an option is just 1 times 5. So let's go ahead and try this 1 times 6 right here. So I'll put 1x here, and I will put 6x here, and I will place 1 and 5 and see what I end up getting. So I'll put the 1 here, and I'll put the 5 here. In this box in the top right, I get x times 1, which is x. In this box on the bottom left, I get 5 times 6x, which is 30x. And there's no way I can get a negative 7x from an x and a 30x. So this trial does not work. So in my next trial, so I know this is 6x squared. I know that this bottom right box is negative 5, and my like terms when I put them together will be negative 7x. So we tried x and 6x right here, which we can keep there, but because we have a 6 right here, that changes what goes in the boxes if I were to swap this 1 and this 5. So put the 5 on the top and the 1 on the side instead. This box right here will be x times 5, which is 5x. Okay, and this box right here will be 1 times 6x, which is 6x. And I cannot get a negative 7x from 5x and 6x, so this trial also does not work. So let's place our information in our box for trial number 3. So we've got our 6x squared, we have our negative 5, and then we have our negative 7x. Now, since we tried x and 6x combined with 1 and 5, and we swapped them, that means that 1 and 6x are not going to work. So let's go ahead and try 2x and 3x instead. So we'll put a 2x here, we'll put a 3x here, we will put a 5 right here and our 1 right here, just like we did in trial number 2. So this box will be 2x times 5, which gives us 10x. And then for my bottom left box, it's 1 times 3x, which is 3x. And I can get a negative 7x from this 10x and this 3x if this 10 is negative and this 3 is positive. So this looks very promising. So since the 10 is negative, that means that this 5 needs to be negative. And since this 3x is positive, that means that this 1 has to be positive. And that means that my two binomials will be 2x plus 1 and 3x minus 5. And this will be our final answer. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out at lulumath.com, where you can also find blank or completed notes from this video. If this was useful to you, don't forget to subscribe for more videos and share with your peers. See you next time.